Hello everyone, welcome to Voluntaryism in Action. My name is Jeff. I'm the publishing manager over at VIA, and I'm bringing you today our first episode of our podcast, Act Voluntarily. So today I'm going to be talking a little bit about the basis of our organization. What is voluntarism? People have heard, of course, of libertarianism, maybe some people of anarcho-capitalism, agorism, and all these have kind of related themes of liberty. Voluntarism doesn't come up too often. So I'm going to talk about what it's all about, and I'm going to be drawing heavily on an article in our philosophy section called What is Voluntarism? By Sarah, one of our board of directors. So the term voluntarism goes all the way back to Auberon Herbert. Now, he was a British philosopher, politician, 19th century. And he was an advocate for individual liberty, private property, and voluntarily funded government. So no taxes. He argued that government should never initiate force, should only be used as a vehicle for defending individual rights. He wrote an essay called The Principles of Voluntarism and Free Life. And he wrote that in a voluntarist society, the state employs force only to repel force, to protect the person and the property of the individual against force and fraud. Under voluntarism, the state would defend the rights of liberty, never aggress upon them. Now, another way to think of it is that voluntarism is a philosophy based on consent. Kind of a buzzword today as regards to particularly sexual intercourse, but we're talking about consent consistently applied in all human interactions. And by consent, we mean uncoerced, positive agreement. Now that we feel is an integral part of a society that's based on natural rights, including freedom of association, private property, self-defense. Now, this sounds great to a lot of people when they first hear it, but they struggle when applying this consent-based philosophy across the board to all social practices, especially when it comes to, as we referred to earlier, the method of funding the government. Now, voluntarism of necessity rejects forced taxation as a valid mode of funding the governments and their social programs because it's impossible, at least as things are currently organized, to obtain consent from each individual. Not only in the appropriation of these funds, the government doesn't ask before it takes them, but also in the ways that the funds are used. So under taxation, it doesn't matter if you're a pacifist and you're opposed to war, the government's still going to spend your tax dollars on bombs. If you're a vegan, you're forced to subsidize dairy farmers. Pro-life advocates, forced to fund abortion providers. Homeschoolers, forced to fund government schools they either can't or don't believe in using. Now, of course, everyone is forced to pay the salaries of the unelected bureaucrats who administrate all of these programs. And there's too many examples of conflicting interests in society at large to even list, because individuals vary too much for central planning to accommodate everyone in a truly ethical way. Now, if at some point in the future we could individually opt in to government services and programs that we wanted to pay for and opt out of the ones we don't like, that would create what Herbert called a voluntary state. Now that would be really interesting. Far more preferable to the forced funding method that we use now. However, given what we have now, the voluntarist philosophy has to state unequivocally that the taxation is theft. What the money is used for, whether we like it to use it or we benefit from the programs, that doesn't matter. It doesn't change the fact that if you refuse to pay your taxes, you will be robbed of your property, forcibly jailed, and, if you resist, killed by the state. There's no consent, most of the time not even a pretense of pretending to get consent, and it's clearly not voluntary. So the voluntarist has to always assert that this kind of aggression and coercion against individuals is absolutely immoral. Force and aggression, according to voluntarism, are only appropriately applied in self-defense of person and property, not procure things for the greater good, the social order, the general welfare. No. Now, regarding those things, however, VIA's mission is to show the world that voluntary philanthropy, not only already extremely common, but much more efficient than government welfare programs. They divvy out pennies for every dollar they appropriate. And voluntary philanthropy and charity is the most moral way to help people, to provide for things like the general welfare and the social good. We reject the state's use of coercion, force, and aggression, even when perhaps their at least stated motives are to help people. Now, we're here to show the world that we can provide ethical, direct charity to individuals in need with the consent of all parties involved through purely voluntary and therefore moral interactions. Now, of course, we would love it if you, as the listener, were to participate in that through us by donating over at viaction.org. But that's not the only way, by far, that you can help people on your own without coercion. So you can go volunteer on your own. Soup kitchen, food bank, just helping out your neighbors. If you keep your eyes and your ears open and look for ways to voluntarily help people, they are there. And by doing so, you are going to help make the world a better place. So thank you very much for listening. Once again, I'm Jeff with Voluntaryism in Action. And until next time, remember to act voluntarily.